So the list starts with the expensive acrylic brush. Okay, so the truth is your acrylic brush should look like this, but probably a week in with your course, your acrylic brush will look like this. So I wouldn't buy an expensive brush because 99% of beginner nail technicians ruin their first acrylic brush. I actually was called the brush killer of the course because I ruined like three of them. I'm not proud of it, but this is the truth. So you don't need a 90 pounder Collins kit brush. I know that's what most of the nail technicians use because it's a very high quality, and yes, it is working amazing. But when you start with acrylic, you will ruin the brushes because it is kind of a complex thing to learn. So you're better off ruining a cheap one instead of buying a very expensive one first and you ruin that. After ruining a few brushes, when I got confident, I got a more expensive brush. This is a Diamond Master Pro brush, and it was a lot more money, but I bought it 9 years ago, and it is still working. So the next on the list is you think you need 300 gel polish colors, but you don't. 10 years ago, when I started my business, I started my nail business with 9 gel polish colors because I was so broke that I couldn't afford to buy more. I wanted to buy more, but I couldn't. And look at me, 10 years later, I'm still here with a well running business. So the amount of gel polish you have at the start, it really not going to define how big your business is going to be. The truth is, when you're starting out, you don't know what kind of clients you're going to get. You do not know what kind of colors they're going to like. So if you start to buy a lot of blue colors and nobody will want them, they're just going to rot in your drawer. The thing is, you start with 5 colors or 10, it doesn't matter. And once you start to get clients and they come to you, they will say, oh, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. And you will have a clue what kind of colors to buy because they're going to tell you what they want. So every nail technician starts with a small amount of supply if it comes to colors, and they build it up gradually. Today, I have over 300 colors. But believe me, I only use 15 of those because that's what my clients love. So the next one is on the list is a lot of nail art supply, glitter, shimmer, chrome, fancy lines, straight lines, foils, these kind of things. Okay, you do not need those yet because you're a beginner nail technician. Imagine if somebody cannot swim at all and they start to take swimming lessons. They not going to learn on the first day how to swim the fastest and win the competition. No, they just going to learn how not to drown. Okay. So if it comes to the nail business, it means that first of all, you have to learn the basics: how to sanitize, how to prep the nail, how to put on the tip or the form if it comes to extensions, how to use acrylic, how to use gel, how to use acrygel, polygel, hybrid, whatever you want to call it. The nail art is just the top. If I can tell you, I have been in this business for 10 years and I can do crazy amount of nail art. But I tell you one thing, 70% of my clients just want simple colors. No line, no stripe, no flower, no nothing, just a simple color. When you start out your nail business, you shouldn't take those clients who want the fanciest, craziest things because they can go somewhere where they can do that. But as a beginner, you shouldn't put yourself under a crazy amount of pressure just to serve the client and do things you are not ready to do yet. It doesn't mean that you're never going to know, but I want you to understand, instead of wasting money on 300-400 pound worth of supply, you can just do nice, good looking and long lasting nails, and your clients will pay for it and they will come back to you. And once they come back to you, you will do more and more nails. You're going to be more confident what you are doing, and that's when you can pull in the nail art part because it's not going to shock you every single time to do someone's nails. Because let's be honest, once it comes to the very very start, I will never forget my first set. My first paying client cost me 5 hours, okay? And I show you the photo because I saved the photo, okay? I'm not saying it was good looking, but it was a long 5 hours and I was exhausted. Even if they wanted some nail art on top, that it would literally kill me. So you don't buy nail art supply, you save that money that you would waste on it, and that money that you saved, you're gonna buy more acrylic powder and monomer and maybe another brush if you're a brush killer like me, because it will make more sense. Because of the nail course, you will get a starter kit, but it's in the name, starter kit. It won't last forever. And because you have to go home and you have to do homework and you have to practice and practice and practice, you will run out of these supplies. So you don't buy nail art, you buy supplies for your acrylic or your gel. Okay, so here we are with the next one. It's the cheap e-file. I do not want you to buy a cheap e-file. Hear out my story. I bought a cheap e-file 10 years ago because I didn't have so much money. I think I had like £200 to spend. And the cheaper e-file was £90 and the more expensive one was 130-ish. And remember, it was 10 years ago, hence the prices. And I bought the cheapest one because I realized that I could buy more colors because the colors was everything for me. And I bought the cheaper e-file and I realized it didn't have enough power. It was shaky, it was resonating. Then I noticed that when I wanted to take off a bit more bulk, it wasn't strong enough. So it stopped rotating when I was sitting there with the client. So the problem is with the e-file, if you buy a cheap e-file, that's going to be the most expensive cheap thing you bought because you will have to buy it twice. I bought a more expensive e-file when I realized that the cheap one was the biggest regret of my life. And I have that e-file in here and I bought it in 2017 and now it's 2026 and has been my best friend for 9 years. So I would encourage you to buy an expensive e-file that makes sense to buy and it will serve you for years. And I'm just letting you know, guys, I'm gonna make a video on how to buy the best e-file, but it's gonna be a separate video. So no cheap e-file, expensive one, because that will serve you the way you need it. Okay, so here we are with the nail desk. Um, this nail desk is professionally made and it is absolutely expensive, but you don't need an expensive one at the very start. When I started out, I share a photo with you how my first setup looked like, and it's kind of ridiculous looking compared to what I have right now. But at the start, usually we don't have a lot of money to put into these kind of supplies, which is completely fine. So don't feel bad that you don't have 2.5 grand just to burn on things. It's okay not to have it. I went to the IKEA and I bought that white desk for probably £19. And the trick I can tell you how you can make this so much easier for yourself. The length of the table, it is usually 130, 140 centimeters. And if we're talking about the width, so, and it's comfortable for you and for the client as well, and they don't have to lean over too much, it should be 60 centimeter, the width. This is what I have in measurements on this table. So if you like to buy something similar, just follow these measurements and you're going to be able to buy something that will do the job for you until you can save up and buy a better desk. A built-in dust collector. We were basically talking about the desk, but this one has a built-in one. You don't need that yet. So you can buy a dust collector that you can put on the top of the table. A dust collector actually very, very important because the dust will go absolutely everywhere and I can prove this to you in 4 seconds. I have a professional dust collector. The dust goes absolutely everywhere and it comes to your health as well. It's not just like the dust is ugly looking. The dust contains dead skin cells and nail plate. When you start to remove product from the client's nail, you have no clue what's in that. So you have to protect yourself. That's why I would say buy a dust collector. I remember at the very start when I didn't have a dust collector, I was filing the client's nail, and in my nose, all my nose hair was completely white, and it is unhealthy, disgusting, and it's your best interest to have a dust collector, even if it's a cheap one. That's completely fine, but have something. And then let's talk about the lump, what you have in here. You would think a cheaper would do, or you don't need one at all, but I'll show you in 2 seconds what kind of differences you can get with a lump and without a lump. So you can see that if you don't have a lump, basically you see absolutely nothing. And when you have the right lump, you will see what you are working on. And the other thing is that you're not going to get shadows. So that's why the lump has to be this wide, because the light will come from every angle. So you're not going to create a shadow. So you're going to see what you are doing. And it is really, really important. This next one is actually funny because I can see this happening to nearly everybody who is in the nail business newly. So this one will be that you do not need a logo for £200, and you do not need branded hoodies, okay? I actually spent £350 to get a logo for my teaching business because I'm an educator as well. So yes, I paid £350 for this logo. This logo, let's be honest, is absolute shite. You do not need this because like I could have done probably better in Canva, but I trusted that company so much that they're gonna represent me. Oh my God, no, it's not, no, you don't need it. Absolutely not needed, because people not gonna recognize you by your logo. They're gonna recognize you by your work, that you're trustworthy, that you can do quality, and you're a reliable nail technician. The logo can be years later or like 6 months in the business. You don't need that. This is my nail business logo, not my teaching logo. I bought this jumper in Primark for £6, and the logo is basically I found a fancy font on my iPod Procreate, and my friend printed it for me for like £10. I have another color, like a light gray, and this peachy color, and that's all I have. The reason why I chose to do this, because when you work in, there will be accidents happening. Accidentally, you're gonna put your hand into the paint and it's gonna ruin your clothes. So I decided to invest in probably £25 because I rather ruin these clothes than the clothes that I would wear on the street. So whatever you would spend on logos and hoodies, just keep stocking up the money, and you will have enough money to start out when you will have the first clients and they start to pay money for you, and you're going to extend your color supplies. The thing is that you will need loads of files, top coats, and acrylic powder and monomer or gel, whatever you're using, because these will be the things that will run out the fastest. This might be a funny one actually, but the next thing you don't need is a color display wheel. This is what I meant. Please ignore that I painted on these because when I was a beginner, I just couldn't stop myself, and you can see what kind of crop job I could do. So you don't need these things. I tell you why, and I tell you a trick. So if you have 5 or 10 colors, those colors will look kind of silly on a color display wheel like this because you can't cover the whole wheel. And let's say you have 300 colors like I do, and you have 6 or 7 of these, and once you have your client sitting in there and be like, okay, what kind of color would you like? And she says, I don't know. And it's a true story that I was sitting there with nearly every of my clients for 25 minutes because they couldn't pick a color, because I had too many pinks, I had too many blues and purples and greens, and they couldn't make a decision. And I went like, if I waste 25 minutes with every single client just on how to pick a color, I'm going to pull my hair out. So I ditched these color wheels forever. I do not display my colors anywhere at all. I keep them in the drawer. And once I sit down with the client, I simply go, what color would you like today? And she said, I don't know. I was like, no problem. Would you like light or dark? She says light. Would you like nude, pink, or purple? And she's going to pick one of these. And once I know, she says light purple, I'm going to show her my light purple. And she says, okay, I love this. And you reduced 25 minutes into 2 minutes. This one will be probably surprising, but the other things you don't need is colored acrylic powder. Colored acrylic powder is usually curing so much faster than the other acrylic powders. So it's not recommended to practice with them because, first of all, you're not going to see what you're doing because the color is not see through. So you have no clue what's going on. The other thing, they cure very, very fast and they can ruin your brush very, very easily. If you're not that confident or experienced with acrylic, colored acrylic will be your enemy. If it comes to nude acrylic powder, I would have probably two different shades. I would have like a more peachy color and I would have like a more pinkish tone. And if it comes to clients, you can tell which one would go better to their skin tone. Starting a nail school, it doesn't mean that you have to buy everything in one go right now. And also doesn't mean that you have to buy the cheapest or the most expensive. These things can save you money and you will have plenty of time to upgrade later. And also, as I mentioned, I made these mistakes back in the days because I didn't know any better. And hopefully, after watching this video, you're gonna make less mistakes. If you are starting the nail school soon, I have another video already on my channel that is I'm talking about what you actually need to buy before you start your nail school because those things on that list cost almost nothing.